Vampires are one of those monsters that seem underwhelming in nearly every medium these days, so anytime a product makes them out to be something more than a potential romantic interest, mindless zombie creature, or just the same old character who happens to drink a little blood on a Friday night to seem bad, more often than not, that series will pique my interest. I wouldn't say Sirius the Jaeger is master class, or it will stick out among the best vampire stories of all time, but what I can say, it's a vampire anime worth watching for anyone who enjoys the creature of the night surrounded by a fun cast of characters, personal driven stories, with a fairly fascinating world backing it. Sirius the Jaeger follows a group of vampire hunters known as Jaegers, trained hunters tasked with taking down the creature of the night. In this world, vampires have two classes, the first of which are the royals, who appear to be human with very few weaknesses, high physical abilities, and can turn others into vampires to do their bidding. They can blend in with the common folk due to their striking human appearance, and when you least expect it, end your life and disappear without anyone knowing who or what was behind the attack. The strongest, rarest, and most respected type of vampires in the market that no one should ever cross paths with. Then you have the slaves. The common and weak type of vampires you'll see that can't turn others into vampires are far less capable in battle than that of the royals, so that's why you'll usually see them with guns more often than not, but can also transform into a monstrous beast. They simply follow orders as they are nothing more than animals or servants to their masters. The main character Yuli lost his family as a child and was saved just before he was ready to die by a professor named Willard, who taught Yuli to take his loss and turn it into revenge, and thus the story of Sirius the Jaeger was born. Now that sounds like a fun premise, but you can also point to numerous other stories from other mediums, and you can say you've seen this exact idea done before. And though I won't argue Sirius the Jaeger is the most original anime out there, it isn't. But all these familiar aspects do however end up building into a worthwhile anime experience. Vampire hunters are done quite often, but what makes Jaegers a bit different is how the group interacts and deals with them, but also each other. Often vampire hunters are pretty set in stone on just killing the vampires, and that's that. Not having fun or goofing off, because when a creature like that is roaming the streets, there's no time for fun. But the characters in this group actually feel human, like you'd want to be friends with them, or at least be on their good side, as they generally will have your back. They have their duties, they have their maturity, but they often feel as if they don't take most scenes 100% serious, at least in the beginning. But rather, it's as if they're just a group of friends and family on a weird vampire hunting vacation more often than not, and when they need to be serious, they are. But often they have this grin on their face while they tackle these ghastly creatures because of how skilled they truly are. Which I appreciate, because though I like my serious stories, this is anime, and one of the key benefits to the medium is being a bit sillier without it feeling too off-putting, as long as the creators strike that proper balance of comedic and serious, which I can safely say this anime handled quite well more often than not. Though I enjoy the characters in this anime, I wouldn't necessarily say I was wowed by most. Yuli himself was a fantastic lead. We learn his backstory early on, which helps us understand where he is coming from and why his personality is the way it is. He feels like the kind of character who had this base level design that was fun to follow, but quickly became someone you were interested in past action sequences because of his backstory and his current quest for this mysterious object known as the Ark, as he and the vampires are both after it. Everything a story needed to do for its central character they did with Yuli, especially when his past pops back up to haunt him. Willard himself was fairly solid all around, the man who was almost like this father figure to Yuli, and anytime he was on screen I was interested in him even if he wasn't leading the scenes, as his presence gave you this feeling like he always knew more than he was letting on, but you also wanted to trust him all at the same time. But the rest of the cast just felt fine to me. I'm glad all the characters in this anime were here, but most scenes they were in just happened to be enjoyable because they were interacting with others, not because they were leading the scenes to greatness. It felt like a family more often than not. Yeah, some don't get along that well, but at the end of the day they all have each other's backs. And though most had distinct and enjoyable personalities, you appreciate them not because of the singular character, but because of how they bounced off others and general situations. I can't say I got to really know most of them like I did with Yuli, or even Willard to a certain degree. I understand their basic principles and makeup, how their mind works in most situations, but because of the short runtime, we didn't get the same level of character development like we did with Yuli. And though this doesn't ruin the anime in any way, I was never disappointed with them really, but leaving this anime, I recognized I wanted far more out of their characters than what was delivered to me. Now the fact that vampires actually feel like vampires, it sells this world far more than a lot of modern day vampire stories. The two types of vampires also help make it stick out among most recent entries to the genre, at least in anime. The royals are basically enhanced humans, the standard vampires creators almost always went with before settling for worse designs. A lot of times writers just craft vampires that are really just zombies with a new skin, but vampires can think, they do feel something, but they are driven by animal-like lust. So having different royal vampires feel like separate people, some for the cause, some just being a mindless soldier, or others clearly doing their own thing, made vampires in Sirius the Jaeger exactly how I like them, not just some mindless killer like I generally see with the genre, but rather a group of people all varied who all deal with this this new way of life as a creature of the night in varied ways. With slaves being mindless servants, it checks all the boxes needed for what I consider to be a worthwhile vampire story. There is a clear end goal laid out early on, and the story remains snappy to reach it. Within 12 episodes, there isn't a lot of room to kick back and relax. The anime does have a few select moments like that, just to make sure you don't think the episode feels like it's rushing towards its ending, but it keeps the story moving at a fairly fast pace that just stays slow enough so it doesn't feel totally rushed. I've seen far worse anime that handle a story like this in 12 episodes, and overall I left episode 12 with a grin on my face. Not really put off by how the pacing was handled, but more episodes were definitely wanted just to flesh out some aspects that had to be skimmed over. The action isn't overused and never feels like this is a series trying to make vampire killing its selling point. Sure, it's amazing to watch due to the unique variations of fighting styles, but what it really tries to hammer in, and what I think it succeeded at doing at, is making Yuli its star. His past, his future, and his end goal, the main drive to the series. Action does remain relevant, vampire hunting never goes away totally, but the personal story of its main character is what makes this a fairly enjoyable and worthwhile experience. When you have an interesting though not totally unique take on vampires who actually act in the way that feels like the classic design that most had come to love, a world that appears to be normal but has this mysterious element lurking in the background with the Jaegers and other mysterious cultures such as Yuli's, mixed in with a fairly lovable and rootable main character, it's hard to say this was anything less than a fairly fun and fulfilling experience. Sure, the side characters felt underdeveloped, but at least they felt needed for the scenes they were in, and you bought into the idea of Jaegers. You just didn't really get to know them the same way you got to know Yuli. PA Works creates some of my favorite series both from a written and visual standpoint, and Sirius the Jaeger is an interesting step away from what they've been doing over the past few years, since most when they think of PA Works would probably think of their dramas or their work-based series. Though this series isn't always dark and gloomy, it is a brilliant new step the studio took. First off, the character designs are all damn fun. Anime is weird and anime can be weird. Most non-anime fans, when they think of the medium, if they aren't currently thinking of the tentacle thing that they will mention, will think of crazy anime hair. And though this isn't the craziest hair you'll see, it remains a bit out there, which actually helps sell the personalities of its characters. Like how Yuli has this uneven and straggly looking head of hair, it gives you this idea that he has a wild side to him, but he secretly tries to keep it normal and under control, which matches his personality exceptionally well, since he always has to fight to keep his emotions under check despite usually appearing to be a cool, calm, and collected individual. You have characters like Dorothea, who has a head of hair so full of life that immediately grabs your attention, as does her personality. She looks more mature than she should be, and almost motherly like her character acts towards many in the group. Fallon sticks out as a man who will always kick some ass, but will have your back at the same time. From general outfits the characters would wear to their central key features, this is what I love about anime, the unique designs that if implemented into reality would stick out like a sore thumb, but in animation, it seems right at home. The character animation more often than not was fluid and top notch, action sequences looked amazing every single time, and where I was expecting it to dip, take shortcuts, or shift the style around, it never did and remained fluid and precise. Each character had unique weapons and fight styles that they used in battle, and with how each sequence never felt the same but always varied from the last, it actually helped sell you into what was happening on screen, as if they were fighting real creatures and people, and that's how you sell your fans on the action, by making it varied. Not to mention how they animated the vampires dying was just spectacular and beautiful to look at. Now background wise, it was typically spot on. Now you may not remember the series as having the best background art in recent memory, but it managed to make each scene feel like it was full of life, as if someone was actually interacting with it and lived there. It didn't feel like second thought, but rather some level of effort was put in to making their background shots actually feel like it was a part of a world rather than just being a part of an anime scene. The general presentation for its characters typically didn't blow me away, however. PA Works never made the character designs to pop out as a crisp, clean model for each scene. You often will notice rough designs or under-detailed ones in many focal scenes that were outside of the action sequences when it came to general facial detail. But it's never atrocious, don't get me wrong. You just will notice a major difference in quality from action or more one-on-one character sequences where it's highly polished, whereas the rest, it just felt solid. I can't say much in terms of the sound direction impressed me, but rather everything needed in order to make an enjoyable anime was present. Solid voice work all around, though Yuli and Willard were the stars in that department. I felt the most range and emotion portrayed through their actors, with the rest fitting their characters fairly well. Sound effects added weight to most scenes, letting you buy into the movement in the world, and music when present filled the scenes in a way to help keep you in the moment, but nothing really went above or beyond. I found everything to be acceptable, and certain times quite remarkable in key episodes. While watching, I had no real issues. I never thought to myself this feels weak or lesser in quality in the past anime I have watched, but looking back I realized nothing really wowed me that much, or I'd point out when trying to sell someone on this anime. The presentation and writing is where I'd focus my time and effort with. It's why I don't really have much to say on the matter. Everything it needed to do, it technically did, good, just don't expect many aspects in the sound department to really wow you. Now overall, Sirius the Jaeger doesn't overstay its welcome. It remains to have a fairly solid and quick pace, but lets the viewer understand the basic fundamentals of all its characters, but keeps the focus on Yuli and his family-led story more often than not. Nothing about this is that unique to the world of vampires, but it took most of the aspects I love about the creature and story surrounding them and built an anime from some of the best groundwork in the genre, making this an overall worthwhile experience for any vampire fan. So I award Sirius the Jaeger my seal of approval. This probably won't top your favorite anime, but it should entertain you, and I appreciate the fact that action wasn't the selling point here, but rather Yuli's story was. Let me know your thoughts on the anime or the video down in that comment section below. Remember to leave a like if you did enjoy, and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content from me in the future. There's also my Patreon where you can directly fund and support what I do for as little as $1 a month if you so wish, but until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.